Moving our way back to the vehicle takes us to the tank's wireless antenna. The radio control antenna on the stock Heng Long tank, as many know, is located in this location here. This location here is inaccurate and greatly hurts the look of the model. I went ahead and removed the antenna from this location, deleted the hole via bodywork, and readjusted the antenna to its appropriate location. As for the antenna base, this is the one that comes with the Heng Long model, and what was modified, instead of using that long spring whip antenna that comes with the tank, I went ahead and drilled a hole in the center of the brass mount, soldered the antenna to the brass, and clipped the antenna to the appropriate height. I went ahead then and painted the antenna as it would be found on a regular German tank. The bottom portion would be rubber and it's black, and the center stem here would be a brass tube, and a simple drop of brass paint facilitates the look. Also, as we could see, moving our way to the grill work, the grill work is absent of any photo etch grenade grill covers. This is done on purpose. The grenade grills were a later development and were not found on the initial production versions. Another difference that we can see is that of the fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher on most Tiger I's is found on this location here and jets off over the grill work. However, because of the tow cable arrangement, the fire extinguisher was originally found right behind the radiator filler cap. Also, while on the back, one thing to point out is that on the Heng Long tank, there is a long tube that is found on this portion here of the rear of the hull. On the real tank, this would be for the antenna storage. Now, on the Tiger I, it is found on this portion here. However, Heng Long made the mistake in molding this component on both sides of the vehicle. For this portion here, it would be incorrect, as no Tiger I featured an extra antenna tube found in this location. To improve the look of the tank, I went ahead and deleted the extra antenna tube, sanding it flush. This is also true for the taillight. On the original Heng Long tank, there are two taillights molded into the lower portions of the rear fenders. Both of these were deleted on this tank, as the taillight that's represented is that of the later tube style and not the couple wagon style, which would have been found on the initial production tank. Moving to the engine hatch of the tank, this portion here also required a little bit of tweaking in order to backdate the tank to the initial production vehicle that you see here. Starting with the inlet, on the tanks equipped with the FIFO system, there is the FIFO Y, which is found in this location here. The FIFO Y simply pops off of the tank without much work. Once removed, I went ahead and replaced it with the cover that you have here. The cover was actually an aftermarket component and came with the set of the final drive bosses, which I mentioned earlier. The set came with the two reinforcement straps and the inlet. Now, the inlet that's represented doesn't necessarily look like this. It's that of the later versions of the Tigers, the ones that did not feature the FIFO system. That version had a small little piece that jutted out and angled on the sides. That shape would have been incorrect for this version of the Tiger. However, it was a simple fix. I went ahead and put this piece in the mill and milled away the extra portion that overhung. The piece was then deburred and simply remounted to the engine deck. Once mounted, the backdating process was complete for this part here. Also, while we're on the back, we could see here the small little weld bead that I mentioned earlier about the top deck being two halves, as well as the handles. The kit ones were very flimsy and were replaced with new ones bent from steel wire. Moving our way to the tank's gun barrel. The gun barrel on the 2015 version of the Heng Long tank is improved from that of the original version. The original 2005 generation featured the gun in a recoiled state, and it was much shorter than the way you see it here. The purpose of that was because Heng Long decided to make the gun in the recoiled state in order to fit the tank in a smaller box, thus saving on costs. However, by doing this, greatly hurt the look of the model, as the barrel was too short. However, on the 2015 version, this here was retooled, and the barrel is at the appropriate length. Just like with the other Heng Long versions, this one here is equipped with the airsoft gun. Moving our way to the mantlet, first takes us here to the barrel protective shroud. The shroud, as you can see, I went ahead and mounted and installed these small little fastener holes, which are located on 3 portions of the gun. There's 2 here, 2 on the opposite side, and 2 more found directly on the bottom of the tube. This simple addition also greatly helps improve the accuracy of the build. As for the mantlet itself, this is another portion of the build that was also improved from the original Heng Long version. Like I mentioned in the other video, the original Heng Long Tiger I's featured the mantlet mounted upside down. In the past, it would have required a little bit of elbow work in order to correct the mantlet in order to sit properly. However, the piece was retooled and the new versions of the Heng Long Tiger are mounted in the correct space. But another feature what was modified to this version of the tank was to further backdate it to that of an initial production Tiger. I went ahead and deleted the small little armor collar that is found on this location here. On the later versions of the Tiger, you will see a bar that's integrally casted into the mantlet. The purpose of that bar was deemed that the gunner's periscope in this location here was a shot trap and was easily penetrated by anti-tank rounds. This was remedied by the addition of the extra armor slab. The slab is present on the Heng Long mantlet. To backdate it, the slab was removed, deleted, and then bodywork was done in order to make it for a seamless appearance. Moving to the tank smoke dischargers. The smoke dischargers that you see here are an aftermarket addition and are actually the ones that are for the Tagan tank. These parts here were acquired from IMEX. They are, like I mentioned in the Tagan Tiger I video, they are extremely nicely done. They're made out of brass and aluminum and come pre-assembled. One modification that I did make to them is just like I did on the other build. I went ahead and added the cable detailing as well as the fastener detailing, which are absent on the stock Tagan units. Moving our way to the back portion of the turret takes us to the rear plate. This is one portion here that will require the most amount of work on converting the tank to an initial Leningrad vehicle. The reason for that is because on the Heng Long model, there is a molded-in box that is found in this location here. In order to build a tank like this, that box needs to be removed. Now, unfortunately, inside that box contains the gun elevation for the main gun. The box was removed by the owner of the vehicle. In addition to removing the box, he didn't want to go ahead and redo the electronics, so he simply just disconnected the gun elevation. This model does not have an elevating gun. The gun is fixed in the elevation that you see here. Once the gun was modified, the rear plate, the hole was plugged up and sanded smooth with the bodywork. The detailing was added, namely that of the rear lift lug, as well as the small little brackets which would have been used for a Panzer III style bustle bin. Now, another modification to keep a note of the Heng Long model is that on the rear portion of the turret. Because of the gearbox for the gun elevation, the turret is actually somewhat elongated in the rear. Because of that, it needs to have clearance with the FIFO system and other components on the deck. So what Heng Long did was they went ahead and molded in a small little recess on this portion here. This creates a neck which bypasses a lot of the detailing on the deck and makes the turret clear when it rotates. Problem is that once you remove the bin, this recess here becomes very visible and is a very big eyesore. With the FIFO system removed, the tank's turret will have nothing more to interact with, so removal of the seam and the neck is greatly needed. The neck cavity was filled in with bodywork and sanded flush the way you see it here. In addition to what I said before, another feature that makes this an initial production Tiger is that of the dual pistol ports. As a lot of Tiger fans will know, there is a large escape hatch found in this portion here of the turret that's found on pretty much all of the Tiger I's that have been made after this version here. However, when the Tiger I was originally developed, rather than the escape hatch, a second pistol port was found. The pistol port that you see here is a metal aftermarket component, and was another piece that was acquired from Oz Armor. Moving our way up to the tank's copula. The Commander's copula that you see here is another aftermarket component. The stock version is very basic and doesn't have any detailing on the Commander's hatch. All these details are present on the white metal version. Just like with all Heng Long tanks, you open up the hatch in order to load up the hopper with the airsoft BBs. The interior portion of the hatch has also been painted. Another quick addition was that of the hatch stop. This component here was missing on the original kit, and I fabricated it out of brass and plastic. Finally, and the most notable component on this build is that of the saddlebag style storage bins. Unlike all the other versions of the Tiger I, which featured a bustle bin in the back for storage of external components, this version of the Tiger I features them in two small bins found on the tank sides of the turret. These components here are a new addition to the EastCoastArmory.com product line and come in the set that I mentioned earlier, which contains the bins, the antenna stub, and the toolbox, which I mentioned earlier. The bins have all of their detailing on it for the lid, as well as the small latch. They also come with a strip of brass to be used for that of the mounting straps that we have here on the turret sides. The purpose for these bins here, like I mentioned in the 1/6 scale Tiger video, was that when the Tiger was first developed, the storage bin was an afterthought and actually wasn't even designed to have it. Once the tank started being produced and fielded, the crew realized that they needed to come up with a way to stow equipment that can't be fit inside of the tank. So these bins that you see here were probably a field modification. However, Tiger 100, which is what this tank is represented, does have the bins present. It wasn't until the early to mid-production run of the Tiger was when the rear bustle bin in the back was finally finalized with the design that we've all come to know. As for the way the vehicle is painted and weathered, this is identical to my 1/6 scale Tiger variant. As for the markings that you see here are actually a decal set from Elite Armor. The decals are very high quality and are greatly recommended. The decals sheet includes the number, the 100. It gives you two of them, one for each side of the bin. It comes with the cross, again, in pairs. It also comes with the 502 Tank Regiment Marching Woolly Mammoth for the front in the appropriate small size. And it also comes with the larger version, which is found on the rear portion of the turret. The decals were of very high quality and went on without any problems. Let's go ahead and take the tank for a test drive. However, before I do, the tank itself, as of note, this being the current version of the Heng Long, is greatly improved from the previous generations, as I mentioned earlier. Some of the differences, besides what I mentioned before, is that of the mechanical components. The tank does feature a smoke system, a sound system, as well as a proportional drive speed controller. All these were absent on the first generation Heng Long releases that you can see in my Tiki Heng Long rebuild video. In addition to the proportional speed controller, the tank also has on the radio an actual crystal that can be swapped out in order to have the tank run on different channels. This is also an improvement from the original version. The original first generation release had a switch in order to pick a channel and mate the tank to the radio. That system is a little bit problematic, and the crystal system is a lot more higher quality and works a lot better. The radio is the same styling as the older versions, but have three little buttons here on the bottom. The first one here starts your engine, the second one is your machine gun, and the third one is the cannon. By pushing this button, the tank will also recoil. The main gun can be fired two different ways. You can use this button for the recoil, or if you're running, you could hold up on the radio, which will fire the gun with no recoil animation present. This stick here is purely for drive functions. The tank can neutral steer, which is a feature found on the real Tiger I. As for rotating the turret, that is done with this stick here. Now, on the normal Heng Long, going down on the radio will make the gun elevate in the press. However, like I mentioned earlier, one of the sacrifices that were made to this tank by the previous builder was that to remove the bustle bin, he also had to deactivate the gun elevation system. Because of that, the gun is at a fixed height. It does still go up and down, but not via the radio. In order to make the gun work with a servo, that can be done. However, to do that, you will have to lose the stock electronics and replace them with a Futaba or another type of higher quality radio. To power the tank on, unlike the Tagan, in which there's a power switch located underneath this hatch here, the Heng Long, it's just like it is on the first generation releases, and that is of a main switch, which is found here on the bottom portion of the tank. This large switch here is the main power, and this switch here is actually a little bit misleading. On the original Heng Long release, this switch here would have been used for the adjustment of the channels to switch it to match the channel on the radio. However, the tooling for this panel here is for this plate here is identical and was not changed. So it still has the little channel change markers, which are located in this piece here, and it's molded in. However, on this 2015 version of the Heng Long tank, this switch here, instead of being used for changing the channels, is actually used for the kill switch for the tank's smoke system. Now, one interesting note, on this tank, for whatever reason, the smoke system was not functioning with that of the tank circuitry. The way the tank's supposed to work is when you hit this switch here, and if this switch is on, the sound system starts up and the smoke begins to be emitted from the smoke system, much in the same exact manner as is found on the Tagan tanks. For some reason though, on this tank here, that system was malfunctioning. Rather than trying to replace the entire electronical system, I went ahead and modified the system so that the smoke system is actually independent of the rest of the tank circuitry. To turn on the smoke system, you just use the same switch here, and the switch is just a simple on and off, and it activates the smoke system. Now, the smoke system on the Tagan tank as well as on the Heng Long is not proportional to the sound system, so the smoke being emitted is going to be identical to that of the way the stock setup was originally set up. To change the batteries on the Heng Long are located in this little panel here. You pull this tab, the plate falls out, and there's a 7.2 battery located inside. To change the battery for the smoke system, I modified this little plate here. On the Heng Long, there's this little axis panel that has the logo on it. I went ahead and made the panel removable via fasteners. By the removal of this plate here, two 9-volt batteries which are hooked up in parallel will pop out, and there you can change the batteries for your smoke system. To turn on the model, like with all RC tanks, first you turn on the radio. I will hit the main power switch. And now I will turn on the smoke system. As you can see, here goes the smoke system in operation, and it's puffing away. Also, as you can see, the amount of volume coming out of the smoke system is focused because of the solid exhaust stacks that I mentioned earlier. Another change with the newer version of the Heng Long is that of the headlights. As you can see, they are blinking right now. That is because the radio does not have its engine feature turned on. On the old original Heng Longs, the only time the headlights would be activated is when the tank would be driving either forward or in reverse. To start up the tank, you simply push the little button that has the engine on it. And it started up the engine noise. Let's test the turret. Rotation is very smooth. The bow machine gun is also another modification done to the Heng Longs from the original. And that was firing of the main gun. I will now load up the hopper with some BBs and take the tank for a test run. And that concludes this model showcase video for this 1/16 scale, radio-controlled, initial production German Tiger I. If you like this video, stop by and like us on Facebook. And don't forget to check out eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detail components. Thank you.